In Amos chapter 3, he wrote, can two walk together unless they be agreed? What this is talking about is if you're going to talk with someone, somewhere down that road you have to come to an agreement. Like for instance, if you're going to talk about evolution, if you're going to talk to an evolutionist, 99.999% of them are going to say that there was a beginning. That there was a point when there was nothing, and then there was a point when there was something. All scientists agree except for the holdouts. And if you're talking with one of the holdouts and they say, no, the universe is eternal, you're not ever going to be able to go anywhere. So you're not going to be able to have a conversation. Basically, that's it. So if you can't come to an agreement somewhere down the road, someplace that you can launch from, and you're both agreed to where that is, then you're not going to be doing much evangelism. Now, by this, I mean, if someone is talking with you and they want to argue a point or they want to debate, and it becomes obvious to you that is their objective, then shake the dust off your feet, turn around and walk away. We are not called in the scriptures to debate. We are called to evangelize. The second thing I mean by this is if we go into a conversation where we want to win the argument, they should shake the dust off their feet and walk away from us. We don't want to do that. There was a book I have. I was looking for it. I thought it was here, but it isn't. It's called Evangelism Explosion. It's a great book. I like it. D. James Kennedy wrote it. There's a lot of things in it that I utilize. But one of the things that I've seen with people who utilize that book is they back people into a corner psychologically and they don't have any way out. It's like you played a chess game in their mind and you win every time. And because you win, now they better confess Jesus Christ as Lord. That's not how the scripture works. And that's why I don't particularly care or subscribe to Evangelism Explosion. So anytime people come up to you and they begin to argue a point with you on things like this is called an apagogical argument. And it is where we should not be rationally considering this with anyone, including an evangelist. We don't argue for the point of winning an argument. The Bible says in Proverbs 23:9, do not speak in the hearing of a fool. He will despise the wisdom of your words. So why say it? The other day we're looking at Matthew chapter 7 where Jesus said, don't cast pearls before swine. It's the same thing. They'll just trample it underfoot. Proverbs 26:4, don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, or you'll be like him yourself. Just don't do it. But you got to be careful at the same time. Sometimes people get hung up on questions that they've talked to someone before you and they didn't satisfactorily answer the question. I got a guy that I know. I've been talking with this guy for well over 15 years now, and you know what his hang-up is? Cavemen. If you can adequately explain cavemen to me, then I'll be happy. And he's not being facetious. He's learned. He has all the information in front of him, and he's really hung up over that. Now, how do you tell? If you're coming up with someone and they just tend to be argumentative and you're trying to figure out whether they're debating with you or not, or whether they're really searching. One of the things that I like to do to people is I like to ask them this question. If I can logically reveal the fallacy of your point of view, of your argument, if I can show you why that's wrong, would you consider Christianity? If they say no, shake the dust off your feet and walk away. They're not there because they want to listen. They're there because they want to argue. That's the big thing. And what makes it really hard, and what I believe this class is a little different from most or the majority, if not all, of the ones that Kim and I have been through, is the fact that they just teach you how to argue. My thing is, I don't go knocking on doors. I don't go with the idea of I'm going to evangelize. I just say, here am I, Lord, send me someone. Send me someone in my direction. I want to be ready. I want to reveal the hope that is within me. I want to talk to them about it. And sure as shooting, somewhere down the road, usually if I get within a group of people, that kind of thing comes up and I gather a whole lot of people. In this one particular instance that I want to share with you is I was talking to two people. There was a middle-aged man, about 10 years younger than I am. There was another guy, another woman. She was in her early 30s, and we were talking. I thought she was a Christian, and we were talking about the Bible. We're talking about things. Actually, the middle-aged guy brought it up, and we're having a great conversation. And in the middle of the conversation, she off point, completely out of nowhere, she says, "So what you're telling me," and she's singling me out, "what you're telling me, that is, if I don't agree with you, then I'm going to burn in hell. Is that what you're saying?" Well, you got to be careful here. There's two things. Number one, when you're in a conversation and you're evangelizing, you're the most important person there. Is that a prideful statement? This is why this is pearls before swine. This isn't philosophy before swine. These are pearls. It's like the parable said. It's the pearl of great price. This is extremely valuable. So you take care of the conversation. You lead the conversation. You're trying to get these people to see that they're lost. So don't let someone take it off in some intellectual, side point because they just want to argue the point. So she said to me, she said, "So if I don't agree with you, or if we don't agree with you, or are you trying to tell me that I'm going to burn in hell?" So first of all, don't allow them to take control. And I don't turn around and say, "Well, what do you think?" Because why? Why would I not want to do that? Because they're telling me, from what you're telling me, then I'm going to burn in hell. So in other words, if I say, "Well, what do you think?" then she has to explain why she doesn't think she's going to be going to hell. Wouldn't that sound like a good way to handle it? Except I just gave her the floor. And she'll just sit there and talk and talk and talk. And that other guy that I'm talking to might say, "Oh man, I didn't realize the time, I got to go, and I've just lost it." You can't keep control of the conversation if the other person just keeps on going. That's very, very, very important. So if you're talking with someone and they make a statement like that, so what you're telling me then, because what you're doing, giving them the Bible, right? And they've never heard that before. So you're giving them the truth, and they take great offense at it. So you're telling me that if I don't do it your way, then I'm going to burn in hell. Is that what you're saying? And by the way, that question has been asked a lot. Have any of you guys heard that question? Yeah. Okay. How would you respond? How would you respond to that?
Not whether or not you agree with me, it's what the Bible says.
That is a great, and actually that's the direction I go. You take the heavy off of you. I didn't write the Bible. That's what I'm trying to get at. But what you got to do is you have to look at why they're asking the question. Are they seeking an answer, or are they throwing what you said back in your face? If that's the case, you just can't turn around and walk off because you have another person there. You can't walk away from them. They might be seeking, and Satan has put someone in your path to cause a problem. So the point that what she was getting at, maybe she didn't even realize it, was she is trying to make me judgmental. She was trying to make me disparaging. She's trying to make herself look good. Look, I care for you. I'm not as judgmental as this guy is. So you keep it positive. The first thing, instead of lowering yourself to a judgment, then you turn around with something that, God has given us eternal life. Okay, and this life is in His Son. He hath the Son. You finish it. He hath the Son.
That's life.
And that's what the Bible says. That's what the Bible's talking about. So what you did is you took her negative statement and turned it into a positive. And the other guy's looking at that like, yeah, okay. And he can see her aggressiveness, and he did. But he saw that by the answer that I gave, it was a positive one. It was something with hope behind it. Yeah, I got to listen to more of this because I don't know if I have this life or not. And they respond a whole lot better, okay? So, and then from that point, you go to the person so that they don't try to come back and turn it back to the negative or make you look bad. Then you respond with what Jesse just was talking about and say, the argument you have is not with me, okay? Their argument is with God. What you need to do is go to the Bible and find out what he says about it. Argue with God about this, not with me, because this is where I get my information. And that takes all the heavy off of you. Now, this of course is all recap. Then if you have someone, let's say it's not this situation, you're talking with someone who likes to, what I call, argue to the extreme. This is the pure definition of what they call an apagogical argument, is when someone tries to grasp at some answer out there somewhere to prove a point. There's 3 ways, and I've talked to this church about it. I did it last week, but I did it about, 6-7 weeks ago, that there are 3 things that we need to ask. Ask them. Is if they make some point that is causing the whole conversation to slow down to a stop, then there's 3 things you need to ask them about their argument. Whatever accusation, whatever question they have, whatever argument that they try to set before you, then it's the 3 P's. And if you can just remember this, just try to put this to memory. It's not that hard. The first one is the argument that they made. Is it possible that what you're saying is true? And the exceptional vast majority of the time, it is. It is very possible. Okay, I use the example of, you walk outside, what's the chances of getting hit in the head with a meteor? Is it possible? Well, yeah, it's possible. Sure, it's possible. Then you have to ask the second question, which is it probable? Is it likely to be the outcome? Have we all been given these hard hats to run outside, and everybody, you can go to Walmart and they have them on sale this week. You can get your hard hat in case the meteor comes down and hits you on the head. No, because it's not probable. Then the third question is it plausible? Is there evidence? Is there something that we need to consider that we don't know about? Is there information out there that we're unsure of? If the answer is no, then we can eliminate that. So what's happening here is you're asking them if their presupposition is based on a verified reality, or are they insisting on something that is just really how they feel about it. And you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful with this, because we are guilty of the same thing. We tend to argue how we feel. We tend to argue opinions. And if you argue opinions, you're never going to come to a solid answer. Ever. Because everybody has different opinions. So be careful on that one. We're more guilty of that than we think. So 1 Peter 3:15. Be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you. Then I went on to Titus chapter 3 and verse 9, where it says, avoid foolish controversies and arguments and quarrels, because they're unprofitable and they're useless. So stay away from this kind of a thing. That's what I've been talking about. So society does not understand, when you go out there and start to evangelize, the society is not going to understand what in the world you're talking about. Because in the world, they don't think like that. They don't have the information. God has his ways, we have our ways. We have completely given up our ways, and we say we do what God says. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And we're going to think God's thoughts with him instead of our thoughts. That's what we want to do. But we're talking to a people who don't know that. They're used to thinking secularly, the way that they've been taught. What does secular mean? You remember? Secular. Just 2 words.
Without God.
Without God. Just remember, anytime you hear the word secular, that God's not in the picture anywhere. We need to be like the men from Issachar in 1 Chronicles 12:32, when it says the men who understood the times and knew what Israel should do, because they knew the times. They knew what was happening in front of them. And we need to know that, and that's what this class is for. I ask you to turn to Acts chapter 17 and verse 2. I want you to look at this with me. Now, I'm just going to run through these things. If you got questions or anything, or want me to repeat something, shoot your hand up, because if you don't, I'm going to keep on motoring through. Acts chapter 17, verse 2. You got to learn this. You have to understand this. According to Paul's custom, what that means is, this is what you typically find Paul doing. He went to them, and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them from the Scriptures, not from his own personal opinion. He reasoned with them from the Scriptures, and look at verse 3, explaining and giving evidence that Christ had to suffer and rise again from the dead, and saying, this Jesus whom I am proclaiming to you, he is the Mashiach. Okay? He is the chosen one. He is the Christ. And I'm giving you evidence. Can we give evidence? That's what this class is for. I want to show you things that it would be very, very difficult for someone not to see that there is a distinct possibility that, yeah, this whole thing could very, very be true. Okay? So, like in Hosea's day, our society rejects anything we have to say, including what we just read in Acts 17. And the reason is because it sounds foreign to them. Why does it sound foreign to them? Because they've never been taught it from their youth. That's what Hosea 4:6 is talking about. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Why did they have lack of knowledge? Because they didn't learn it from their parents, or their grandparents, or their great-great-grandparents. They didn't learn it in their schools. They didn't learn it from anywhere. So it all sounds foreign to them. And they're going to push back on it because they don't know it. So the only thing that they have been taught, and this is a big one, the only thing that they have been taught is reason. Reason. The ability to empirically support a claim that's based on logic. If you're trying to remember that, I got it up on the monitor. The ability to empirically support. What does empirically mean? Look at verse 3 in Acts 17. Giving evidence. That's empiricism. You're showing undeniably. So the ability to empirically support a claim based on logic. Is there anything wrong with that? I hope not, because we just read, according to Paul's custom, he went with them and for 3 Sabbaths reasoned. So it better not be anything wrong with that. And it isn't. He reasoned. And here's the interesting thing. I've brought this up many times. The word reason in the Greek is a really cool word. It's dialogamahi. Don't listen to the mahi part. Dialoga. What word do we get from dialoga? Dialogue. He dialogued with. And what did he dialogue? They gave them their opinion, their philosophy, and Paul gave them evidence and Scripture. No opinions. This is what we have to know. This is what we have to do. So reason isn't necessarily wrong in and of itself. Paul did it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay? But our country, America, was not formed, it was not based on reason alone. It was based on moral reason. That's where the Scriptures come in. And that moral reason is based on those Scriptures. That's where we get morality from. And the world has secular reasoning. So they go, well, there's no such thing as absolute truth because it's up in the air. Who has the authority to say what's right and wrong? And you can't say this because they don't know it. Except for what you are giving them. So, if reason is the ability to empirically support a claim based on logic, then the question is, what is logic? What is logic? It's a particular system or arrangement of the principles of proof and deduction. Okay, in other words, what you're looking at something is you're assessing it. And what is making sense to you? That's using logic. Not based on your opinion, but based on the proof through deduction. Okay, so if we're, this is what happened to us one time. We were in church. This was on, I don't know if you remember this, sweetheart, but we were in church on a Wednesday night. This is, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago. But we were in church on a Thursday night or Wednesday night, and went on for a while. Afterwards, we got done, and we had a lot of music going on, so we were all practicing different instruments. And we were there for about 2.5 hours. When we opened up the door to go outside, there was about 1.5 inches of snow. And we looked up in the air, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. Where did the snow come from? You can deduce what? A storm must have passed through. There must have been clouds in the sky, but you don't see them now. But how do you explain the snow on the ground? It was really weird to see that. It must have started snowing either really heavy for a short amount of time, or it started snowing once we walked in the church, because it was seriously, it was about that deep. It was really something else. But again, that's what this is. It's proof and deduction. There's snow on the ground. It's right there, and it's everywhere. Their storm must have passed through. So what this literally means then, if you have reason and you have logic, if you put it together, you have logical reasoning, which is to think, understand, and form judgments by a process of proof and deduction. That is how we talk to people. We think, we understand, we communicate, we form our understanding by a process of proof and deduction. Now, our society, from about, I would say the 1960s, probably even earlier than that, what has been taught to us is secular humanism. But it became very evident in the 1960s, and is based on the parameters of what is called, and you need to know this word. This is a very, very important word, and I know that's a kind of a complicated definition there, but I'm showing you what the dictionary says. But what scientism is, it is imposed as the only reliable method to obtain knowledge. If you want to write that down, you'll be doing good, because I guarantee you're not going to remember that one. Okay, I would write down, scientism is imposed as the only reliable method to obtain knowledge. When you obtain knowledge, that means you're coming to understand knowledge. And the only way you have been taught, the only reliable method to obtain knowledge, is through scientism. In other words, science is the only way you're ever going to learn anything. That's why they reduce this to mysticism. That's when you start calling things names. Okay, it's called the argument from ad hominem, and it's not a good thing. Okay, and by the way, scientism, you look it up in any science journal, it'll tell you it's not really science, because it doesn't use the scientific method. Going too fast? Believe it or not, that was a recap. Okay, we good? Can I go on?
Because it's cut off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, scientific, let me see here.
They've all been kind of cut off.
What is true and understandable primarily if it is a scientific claim that has been successfully tested according to scientific methodology. Sorry about that. Did you get that? It's a scientific claim that has been fully tested according to scientific methodology. You know, what's interesting is if pressed on the issue, science will tell you all these things are theories. They will, if you press them, because they're not going to voluntarily tell you that. They will, they have, and they'll continue to present them as a fact. They won't come out and say it unless they just lie to you. But for the most part, they'll tell you as if this is the way it is, and that's what scientism is. And I don't have a problem with a lot of the theories, but I do with a lot of others. Okay, but here's the thing, and this is what I want to get at. Today's society swallows scientism hook, line, and sinker, mainly because they see no proof for many of the claims that are made from the Bible. And one of the hardest things is Jesus walked on water. Can you prove it? No. And they don't want to believe it. Aesop's fables. You know, the Midas touch, everything King Midas touched turned to gold. What's the difference? And I have to admit that it does look kind of far-fetched if you're looking at it from the outside. But here's the thing, the same thing can be said of many of the claims of science. Maybe you've heard this argument before. And I'm serious, I want dialogue on this one. I want someone to tell me who the first president of the United States is.
George
Washington.
George Washington? Okay, I don't think so. Prove to me he existed. And I'm being serious. I'm not being facetious. Prove to me he existed.
His teeth are in the Smithsonian.
Okay, there are teeth in the Smithsonian. How do I know they belong to him? Because somebody wrote his name under them? Obviously that can't be right. What else?
eyewitness testimony.
Eyewitness testimony. Okay. I don't believe him. By the way, where is the eyewitness testimony?
In books.
I got a book. Do you see what I'm talking about? Well, I've seen pictures of him. No, you haven't. You've seen paintings of him. You see what I mean? But we take Pluto. How many of you have seen Pluto? I mean, I'm not talking in a science journal or in an astronomy magazine. How many of you have seen Pluto with your own two eyes? I have a telescope. It's a very, very powerful telescope. It's a really nice one. And I can see as far as Neptune, but that's as far as I can see. Even Neptune looks like an out of focus turquoise cloud. Okay, but I can't see anything past that. Can't see Uranus, I can't see Pluto at all. So, but I believe it exists. Do you? You took it by faith. So science does this to us all the time. Okay, so what we're left with is a science that can do nothing about how we look at our present state of existence. Like, why am I here? If you're nothing but a bunch of cells that are interlocked and working together with certain electrical synapses firing back and forth, and we just do things just to do things, and then we die and go into annihilation, is that what it's all about? Then why do people search for something? Why, there are too many, and we're going to go through this a little bit later, but all science can do is attempt to explain why this biological mechanism called the human body works. It doesn't say how we got here. It's just like I heard someone say the other day, Charles Darwin gave us the survival of the fittest, but he never told us about the arrival of the fittest. He doesn't tell us how we got here. And that's the big question. How did we get here? In fact, science, and this is something you probably want to remember, it always assumes that everything has a natural cause. For instance, the blonde sitting right there, she spins my world. I mean, she's everything to me. Okay, has been for 47, well actually over 50 years. So why is that? If you look to a secular humanist, he'll say because there's something in your neuroses that match her neuroses, and together you just kind of form this bond psychologically, because what she compliments, of her, she compliments of you, and you like the way it makes you feel. It's the way the synapses in the brain are firing. That's all love is. So what did they just do? They took the emotion and they degraded it down to biology. That's what they do. Science can only give you natural science. You've been in school, right? Okay, did you take any of the sciences in school?
Yeah.
What sciences did they list on the syllabus? Do you remember? Did they have a name for them?
Life science.
Okay, life science.
Earth
Okay, astronomy. The life science, what was that about? You can't remember? If you look at the syllabus of a standard, I mean, Victor Valley College over here, it'll say the natural sciences, because that's what they are. What other sciences are there? I mean, you can have the sciences, like biology, but that's a natural science. You can have astronomy, but that's a natural science. Chemistry, well, that's a natural science. What other kind of science is there? There isn't one. Because all they can do is define the natural causes. That's the only thing that they can address, are natural things. They aren't set up to look at anything, any difference. By the way, what love is to them with the synapses, what proof do they have? In any scientific journals on this? No. There aren't. It's just what someone thinks. It's what they imagine. So the fallacy is that science has failed to prove the presupposition that there are any other kinds of causes. I'm going to say that again because that is really important for us to remember. The fallacy is that science has failed to prove the presupposition that there are any other kinds of sciences. All they know is natural science. And they can't prove that that's all there is. It's a lot like I liken it to the stupid joke that I heard about the drunk who's looking for his keys to his car. And he's looking under the street light and someone says, well, where did you lose them? Oh, I lost them way over there. Well, how come you're not over there looking? Well, because the light's better over here. That's how I look at the fact that they refuse to acknowledge anything else because the light is better over here where they're at. So they can't even come close to answering the nagging question of, is this all there is? Okay, what is my purpose if all I am is just some conglomeration of cells? And then, of course, the big one, what happens after I die? Is that it? And that's a huge question. So the scientific method was not set up to measure anything or test anything that isn't material. So where do they get off trying to tell us there is no such thing as a supernatural? They can't test it. They've never investigated it. So the result is that man begins to degrade Father into his subjective feelings, because science is supposed to be objective. But when they make statements, and I'm going to show you a few of these here in just a second, but they go into subjective feelings without even realizing that. In the 21st century, things matter to us, or they're true to us if we feel right, or if they make sense to the individual. In other words, what they do is, I like this, so it's a pragmatic point of view. I like this, it works for me, therefore it must be right, it must be real. And most of us think that way, unfortunately, but that's not right. It might be right to the individual, but somebody else, like someone else was saying, check this out. I see a girl at a party, and I want to have a good time with her, but she won't even look at me. She's way above my what do you call it? She's way up here and I'm way down here, social scale or whatever you want to look at it. So I'll give her a date rape drug, and I can do whatever I want to, and she'll never know it even happened. So who cares? She'll never know, and what she doesn't know won't hurt her, right? Well, is there anything wrong with that?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's everything wrong with that. But according to their line of thinking, no, because she doesn't know. Okay, if you say, no, but that can't be right, that means you're pulling for a moral code that comes from where? Because even you say it's wrong. I mean, to the secular humanist, even they say it's wrong. You can't do that. Like, for instance, you can go up to somebody who works at an abortion clinic and then tell them, yeah, my dog just had puppies, so I drowned them in the toilet. And they'll probably go nuts. Why? Because you kill dogs, but they kill humans. It's just the way they look at it. It's how they assess morality. So we got to be careful of this, okay? Most of our awareness, I didn't say their, I said our. Most of our awareness are the result of us being victims of the public school system. And that's the sciences, the biology, the chemistry, the astronomy, the physics, okay? All of these things, they show the real, genuine knowledge of reality. And that's what you've been taught, and that is what scientism is. If you can't measure it by that, then it doesn't exist. That's scientism. Ethics, morality, virtue, religion, these are all cultural, okay? These are all opinions. Let me give you an example. I think I have this down in your notes. There was a guy named Michael Kinsey. He's a journalist for Time magazine. Now I want you to listen to this because I'm going to ask you how you would respond to this statement. I think it's in your notes. When he was writing on the validity of the stem cell research, he said on June 21st, 2001, this is what he wrote, and I'm quoting, "These embryos are microscopic groupings of a few differentiated cells. There is nothing human about them except potential. And if you choose to believe it, a soul." How would you respond to that statement? How would you respond to that? Well, first of all, what's he making he's declaring something. Anytime someone is going to inform you about something, they're going to declare something. So look at what they're declaring. What is he declaring?
It's not a human.
What is not a human?
The cells.
The embryos. So he's identifying embryos. So he sees, and he's even saying of these embryos that that they have potential. So he's giving at least that. But his first claim of science is there is nothing human about them. Now, I need you to tell me, how do you think he arrived at that conclusion? What scientific method did he use to arrive at that conclusion? He didn't. So don't get caught up in the fact that the guy's a journalist, probably knows a whole lot more than you do. Evidently, by the way he framed this statement, he's very well learned, and you're going to fade into the woodwork. Look at what they're saying. Look at the assertions of what they're saying, and then ask them to back it up. This is something I've done when I talk to, in fact, 99% of the time. Jesse, I talked to your dad about this almost every time we got on the subject of evangelism. They state their point of view, I state my point of view. I ask them, why do you think your point of view is right? And they say, well, because it's just right. I mean, everybody knows it's right. And how do I respond with that?
I'm everybody and I don't know.
Yeah, I'm part of everybody and I'm not agreeing, so that statement can't be correct. So what other reason do you have to think it's right? Well, it's just, I mean, you know, it just logically true. To whom? In other words, you gotta take it down to the source of information. And the source of most people information, if it's their opinion, what is the source of information? Themselves.
Yeah.
They're the source. Then my next question is, have you ever been wrong at any time in your life, ever? Now, of course, they're going to say, yeah, well, then how do you know you're not wrong now? Then they're going to fire back with, okay, Jesse, how do you know you're right? You've been wrong before. To which you reply, oh, that's not the way I'm thinking. Oh, I gave that up a long time ago. But let me tell you where I get my source of information from. This is a book that's over 6,000 years old, and people have devoted their entire lives to find something wrong with it. And guess what? For 6,000 years, nothing's ever been proven wrong. Ever. I think I have better chances taking my information from here than taking it from you. You see what I'm talking about? That's when you take everything down to the origin. And that's where, and most, I would have to say, the exceptional vast majority of the time that people talk with you, they're going to state their own point of view from their opinion, and they don't even realize it. In the statement, there is nothing human about them. Where did they get that? And you look for things like, look for the declaration of a fact that isn't a fact. Look for the fallacy in what they're saying. Because saying there's nothing human about them, I guarantee you right now, these two right over here in their science class refutes that quite successfully. Even in the public school system, they will say, yeah, they're human.
Yeah.
And he said otherwise because he doesn't want it to be that way. He's adamant about the existence of embryos. But when it comes to the soul, that's faith-based. How does he know that? How does he know? Because that's what he feels. There is no scientific journals that prove otherwise. Nothing. Call them on that. Be nice about it, but call them on that. So society is being taught that the only thing that can be accepted are the things that can be proven, aka scientism. You got to remember that word. We've had people in this church that based everything on scientism and not on the Word of God. What they did was they took the miracles in the book of Exodus and gave a natural cause explanation for them. The Bible said there were miracles. Now, if they want to believe otherwise, that's up to them. Okay? But I'm going to believe what the Bible had to say. Now, I want to show you another one, too. And this is really important. I think I have this down in your notes, too. I don't know what page it's on. But look at it with me. Marilyn Vaughn Savant has the highest recorded IQ. She said in a Parade magazine article on October 7th, 2001, very close to what Kinsey said. October 7th, 2001, she said this, and I'm quoting. Now listen for the fallacy. Listen for the assertion of a fact that isn't. Religion cannot, and I'm quoting here, this is verbatim what she says. Religion cannot be proven intellectually. Religion comes from the heart and not from the mind. How would you respond to that? How would you respond?
Back it up. What's your source? Give me a fact.
Yeah, okay, you said it can't be proven intellectually. Why? Because you don't know? You never heard it done before? Like Colette said, where's your information? Where is the thesis, the journal, the scientific journal that proves that religion can't be proven intellectually? Well, believe me, at the end of this class, you are going to be thinking otherwise. Believe me. Religion comes from the heart and not from the mind. Really? Where does psychology come from? See, we're going to make an argument here is using the associative property. 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 2 is 8. It's the same way. If you're going to make an argument on one side by the associative property, you have to make the same argument on the other side. So if they say religion comes from the heart, you say, well, your psychology comes from the heart. It's the same thing. And here's another thing you can say, if you want to go back more scientifically, okay, I think black holes should come from the heart because you want to believe it. You ever seen one? Oh, but they have thesis, they have writings. Really, have you ever seen one? I haven't seen one. How do I know? You ever seen an atom? How do you know they exist? It's just not something that science is talking about. Okay, how about evolution? What about, here's a big one. What about climate change? Even bigger than that we're the cause of it. Can you prove that to me? It still hasn't been proven. Al Gore came close. Just kidding. Just kidding.
That was right on Greek.
So everything that Marilyn Vaughn Savant said, everything that Michael Kinsey said, were faith-based religions. Know that. They'll never say that. But if they say something only because it makes sense to them, it's a faith-based religion, because it hasn't been proven. If it's not been proven, you believe it, then is it faith-based or not? Yes or no? It has to be. What's C? A is fact, B is faith-based, or There is no or. It's one or the other. So if they can't prove it, it's faith-based. They're religionists. They're a mystic just like you. So don't let them back you into a corner. Okay, so the only thing that she knows, and this is a really big thing, it's a good place for me to stop. Oh, I'm 5 minutes over. Okay, let me run through this. The only reason why she knows nothing about the defense of the gospel is because of what? You tell me. Why does she make the statement that religion only comes from the heart and not from the mind, and it can't be proven intellectually? Why does she make such a statement? Because she doesn't know religion. She honestly, I know she has a high IQ, but she doesn't know what she's talking about. I'm not being mean. She just doesn't know about it. Not that it doesn't exist. Okay? I mean, I don't think Bigfoot exists, but I'm not going to put both feet on the floor and say, no, he doesn't, because I haven't been in all places at all times. And who knows? I still don't think he does, but that's another matter. So when you're talking to someone about any spiritual matters, or really anything, you know what the first rule of conversation is? Is the first person who makes an assertion. Okay? Religion comes from the heart, not from the mind. The burden of proof is with them. If they're going to make an assertion, then they have to back up what they're saying. This is why you see so many scriptures behind me when I'm preaching. I'm not saying this is what I'm thinking. I'm saying this is what God says. This is His Word. And this is where I want to end it. I don't want you to become intimidated because of titles, letters behind their name, or maybe because of someone's age, or maybe they're very assertive, they're very aggressive, or maybe they're very sincere in what they believe. Don't be intimidated by these things. I want you, what about a high IQ though? And this is where I'm going to stop it. What about a high IQ? What if you're talking to someone that's been known to have a high IQ? And I've talked to a number of them. Some of these people just completely blow me out of the water, and I'm not being facetious. They do. And some of us have talked about these people. But what do you do when you come across someone with a high IQ? My question is, why would you let that intimidate you? Because think about what IQ means. The intelligent quotient tests, this is what they are focused on. One, I think you may have blanks in your notes. The ability to use logic to solve problems. They are very logically minded. They can assess things very quickly. They look at the logical things and they put them together. People with high IQs can do this. The ability to use logic to solve problems. The second thing they have the ability to do is they recognize patterns in things. Geometric patterns, numerical patterns. They see how certain sentences or structures are formed. And they can look at, like I was looking at something, Ted Kaczynski. Anybody remember who he is? The Unabomber, remember him? You know how they caught him? Because of the way he wrote notes. They looked at one from Ted Kaczynski, and they looked at this one from the guy who wrote the Unabomber thing, and the very similar writing techniques. It took someone with a high IQ to be able to put that together. Third thing, the capacity to make rapid connections between different aspects of information. In other words, to be able, like a detective, to be able to put things together and to assess and come up with a rational, logical explanation for something, where most people can look at it and say, I don't even see it. But they have the ability to make these rapid connections between different aspects of information. The next three things I'm going to give you is where we're going to stop, because I can't give you half of it. Okay? High IQ has nothing to do with what you intimidate yourself with, which is, it has nothing to do with how well a person remembers. Anybody know what speed of light is?
186,000 miles a second.
Ooh, Harold must be smart.
Yeah.
Okay? How when a kangaroo is just moving from point A to point B, he's not in a hurry, he's just jumping. How far does a kangaroo jump on average? Anybody know? 6.2 feet. Now why would I know that? Because I'm so smart, right? No, I just saw the figure and it's in my head. But there's a lot of things I don't know. But we hear people with good memories. They can assess names and dates and places and times and events, and they can recall it with great clarity. And we go, oh, they must be really smart. No, they just have good memories. But what do they do with those good memories? You ever heard the term educated idiot? I have a lot of people that I know that have great memories and they don't know what to do with them. They never learn from what they remember. Second thing, IQs have nothing to do with how much they know about any academic subject. Just because you have a high IQ doesn't mean you're a good chemist. And next week I'll show you what I'm talking about. There was some guy from the Royal Academy in Great Britain who said something that sounds very disparaging about Stephen Hawking, which is considered to be one of the biggest brains other than Einstein. And he said he didn't know what he was talking about. And he was right. Because it has to do with what I'm talking about here. It doesn't mean someone with a high IQ, they don't know everything about everything. They might be able to recall, but they don't know what to do with it. Last one, and this is a big one. Just because someone has a high IQ doesn't mean they have wisdom. What is wisdom? Wisdom is the ability to properly assess any information you have and to make the right decisions with that information. If she was so smart, she would take this home with her, hook, line, and sinker. But we all know that's a logical fallacy. How do you know that's a fallacy? If Marilyn Van Savant read this from cover to cover, what would she do?
Ignore it,
Why do you say that?
because she's not recalling.
How do you know that? Well, I mean, assuming if nothing changed, she is now more educated. That's where you're coming from, right? But doesn't the Bible say in 2 Corinthians 5 that without the Spirit interceding, you don't get it? You don't understand it because they have to be spiritually appraised. They have to be revealed to you by the Spirit of God, not by your own intelligence. You can't assess your way, figure your way into heaven. It doesn't happen. Okay? It's just like I said before. The only one that gives life is the Spirit of God through Jesus Christ. Power of God, that's the way it works. Not because you're so intelligent that you can assess what the black print on the white paper says. It doesn't work that way. Okay, I went over. 10 minutes, sorry. I was really trying not to do that, but it gets away from me. Okay?